Hi, I'm Dre, a health IT consultant and founder of the Dragon Network. On today's video, I want to talk about a cybersecurity threat modeling framework called STRIDE and how it's used in health IT. The framework was developed by Microsoft in the late 90s as a structured way to identify security vulnerabilities across 6 core categories: spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privilege. When leadership implements STRIDE, they require teams to evaluate how the threat would affect any given system or process so the organization can determine the appropriate number of mitigations to put in place. This type of assessment will impact planning, system design, and operational procedures across all IT functions. So let's take a closer look at each one of the categories. First up, we have spoofing. This is when someone pretends to be someone else so that they can gain access to something that they do not have permission to access. To reduce the risk of this happening, organizations will need to put strong authentication practices in place. For example, requiring complex passwords that need to be reset at regular intervals, and implementing biometric or multi-factor authentication processes. They may also implement things like automatic timeouts to prevent someone walking up to a device and using someone else's credentials that way. The T in STRIDE stands for tampering. This is when someone would maliciously alter code or data within a system. Some of the mitigations that you may see in health IT are system integrity checks and the implementation of additional audit tools and alerts for database changes. Next, we have repudiation. This is when someone performs an illegal action within a system and then denies their involvement, knowing that there's no way for anyone to prove that they did it. So to help understand this one, let's look at a non-IT example that I think everyone can understand. Let's say you ordered something online, and the delivery driver brought it to your house and just dropped it off and marked the item as complete. You could turn around and claim that you never received that package. So ways to reduce this risk for the delivery company would be for them to require their drivers to take a photo of where they left the package when they dropped it off, or to obtain a signature from an individual indicating that they did in fact receive the package from that driver. In health IT systems, mitigations for repudiation would include sufficient audit tools, as well as the system stamping individual actions with timestamps and the user's identity. Next, we have the I, which stands for information disclosure. I think this one is pretty familiar to everyone, and it is essentially the access or sharing of information that someone is not authorized to see. So this can happen in a few different ways. It can involve accessing the data for viewing or sharing directly from the front end or from the back end of a system, or it can also mean intercepting the data as it transits between 2 different systems. So to prevent this one from happening, organizations will put a number of privacy safeguards in place. They'll encrypt data both at rest and in transit. They'll also implement data access and sharing policies, and they'll make sure that all of the staff within the organization or anyone who accesses the organization's data is trained on when it's appropriate to share or access information. The D in STRIDE stands for denial of service. So this involves overloading or disrupting a system so that regular users don't have the ability to access or use it. The mitigation for this one is all about performance monitoring, making sure that there's redundancy, and having business continuity plans in place so if something does happen, core operations can continue. Finally, we have elevation of privilege. This is where someone gains access to additional system rights that they shouldn't have access to. What I mean by rights that they don't have access to is something like medical students being able to submit medication orders without having any sort of secondary check or verification by their supervising provider, or a unit clerk being able to document on the medication administration record that meds were given. So to manage this risk, organizations will put comprehensive role-based access controls in place, and they will also remove or severely limit the ability to use generic logins across all system functions. Now that you know what the 6 categories are and some of the mitigations that might be put in place to deal with the risks in those areas, when you hear about STRIDE being implemented in your organization, you'll recognize that leadership isn't talking about some random security thing that they're going to embark upon to make the CISO happy. They're evaluating and responding to 6 specific threat risk categories that are used by bad actors to target health information, resulting in ransomware attacks, data breaches, and system compromises that you hear about in the news. That's all we have for today's video, and I will see you again next time.